The Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, Lord.
Now after the wise men had left, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him." Then Joseph got up, took the child and his mother by night, and went to Egypt, and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I have called my son." When Herod saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, he was infuriated, and he sent and killed all the children in and around Bethlehem who were 2 years old or under, according to the time that he had learned from the wise men. Then was fulfilled what had been spoken through the prophet Jeremiah. A voice was heard in Ramah, wailing and loud lamentation, Rachel weeping for her children. She refused to be consoled because they are no more. When Herod died, an angel of the Lord suddenly appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel. For those who were seeking the child's life are dead." Then Joseph got up, took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was ruling over Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. And after being warned in a dream, he went away to the district of Galilee. There he made his home in a town called Nazareth, so that what had been spoken through the prophets might be fulfilled. He will be called a Nazarene. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise
to you, O Christ. Today we learned that Christmas can be dangerous. In response to our tendency to turn the incarnation into sentimentality, Dietrich Bonhoeffer said this: "We have become so accustomed to the idea of divine love and of God's coming at Christmas that we no longer feel the shiver of fear that God's coming should arouse in us. We are indifferent to the message, taking only the pleasant and agreeable out of it and forgetting the serious aspect, that the God of the world draws near to the people of our little earth and lays claim on us. The coming of God is truly not only glad tidings, but first of all, frightening news for everyone who has a conscience. To participate in this ongoing movement of the one who comes to overturn the powers that be, it's not for the faint of heart. The Herods of this world stand ever ready to eliminate any competing threats to their power, turning even to violence and genocide when they sense such a threat. We need no more evidence than what's been happening the last 10 months in Ukraine or in all the bloody wars of the past century. Such unchecked power creates untold pain and suffering. Rachel continues to weep for her children because they are no more. In our own time, we hear parents year after year weeping for their children killed in shootings. Recall Sandy Hook Elementary 10 years ago, or Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas this past May. 3 weeks ago, I heard directly from 2 grieving parents sharing the story of their losing their 18-year-old daughter in a community gathering just a few blocks from here as we gathered to remember victims of gun violence. And just look at this. This was the insert, page after page. This is page after page, over 600 names of victims of gun violence in Chicago this year, all ages. And even here in Skokie and Evanston, Devin McGregor, 5 years old, Jeremiah Ellis, 9, and Servando Hamros, 29. Many loved ones remain without consolation. The Rachels of today continue to wail for those who are no more. Let's travel back for a moment to when Matthew wrote his gospel. Scholars suggest that he was writing for a largely Jewish audience who knew the Torah well. They would have connected this story of Herod's power play with how Pharaoh held God's people captive in Egypt. They would recall Pharaoh commanding that Egyptian midwives kill the boys born to Hebrew slaves, and how Moses was then placed in a reed basket in a river and thus saved from that fate. Jesus and his family retraced the Exodus journey, first in reverse, finding refuge in Egypt. And then when Joseph has another dream with that angel telling him that Herod has died and that the danger has receded, they come out of Egypt and head back to the promised land of Israel. So Jesus, even as a child, is portrayed here as the new Moses. He retraces the route of the people of Israel from slavery into freedom. I recently saw an advertisement for Jesus on TV that reminded people that Jesus was a refugee. And Lutherans have a long tradition of helping to settle refugee families into their communities. It's one of the ways that we show hospitality to the sojourners among us. It's one of the ways that we resist the ways of Herod and Pharaoh, who do almost anything to preserve their power. When refugees flee from their homeland because they fear for their lives, it's often difficult for them to prove their case beyond their own word that their lives were in danger. I wonder if Joseph and his family would have been granted asylum in Egypt if they had to prove that the child's life was threatened. With the explanation that an angel had told me in a dream that his life was in danger, would that have been proof enough? This day, our silent night, all is calm, all is bright, Christmas season celebration has been interrupted by a massacre of children and the sound of mothers wailing. It's also one way that Matthew foreshadows what is to come. This Herod didn't kill Jesus, but his son, Herod Antipas, would later be a party to his crucifixion. So on this 8th day of Christmas, on this New Year Day, the shadow of Good Friday has already fallen across our path. Good Friday is only good because God comes to enter into the pain and heartache of our world in order to resurrect and transform it. Poet-pastor Steve Garnaas-Holmes, one of my favorite, captures the jolting juxtaposition of joy and sorrow in our Christmas celebration. Every year, politely aghast, we push you aside, Rachel, firmly usher you off stage, away from the baby asleep in the manger, no crying he makes. So don't wake him with your wailing. Again, this year you are not invited to our pageant. Let us come and kneel instead at your cradle, empty, your wanting lap, and behold your devastation at the prison doors, the border walls, the tent cities. For once, let's abandon our denial that you are the reason he came, not our comfort and joy, that our violence is the manger into which he empties himself. Your grief, the abyss he willingly enters. Your cry is his voice. With you, we shove him off stage. and our complicity until we confess that we have ravaged the manger. This is Good Friday, and he does not bear his cross alone. For you, Rachel, and your children, we still are confident carols. Hold silence, and let your lamentation be the song of our angels. Can we heed the cry of the Rachels in our world this day? And what warnings might their angelic voices be communicating to us in this time and place? Our lives too might be in danger as followers of the one who brings God's reign of love and peace into the world. For when we take stands for God's reign of equity and love, there is an implied change to the status quo. And just like the babe from Bethlehem, that Prince of Peace, we too risk persecution and even martyrdom, like what befell Dietrich Bonhoeffer, whom I quoted at the beginning of this message. He not only knew the danger of Christmas, but lost his life for his opposition to the German Nazi regime. Today, we celebrate the fullness of Christmas that moves beyond mere sentimentality. Today, we celebrate a Christmas that includes danger, inconsolable loss, and openness to heeding the direction of God's divine messengers. Listening to those divine messengers who bring God's words of peace and justice to all the earth will change us so that God's voice becomes our voice, speaking truth to power. Like the one who said, "I have made a different choice now. I have left my home, my family, and my job, and I am raising my voice. To do otherwise would betray those who languish in prison. I can speak when so many cannot." Those were the words of Jamal Khashoggi. Today's Christmas story shows us that Christ came into a broken, imperfect world where fanatical leaders consolidate their power with the blood of the innocent. Real life involves real pain and suffering. The cost of deep love is deep grief. And some people experience more than their fair share of disappointments, abuse, and violence. Evil is real, and every age has a Herod or two. This is reason enough for Christ to be born among us. Christ came to be present with us in our suffering and to embody within us God's ways of love. How might we as a congregation embody Christ's presence and be a safe place, offering refuge to any and all who have been traumatized by violence in their lives? Can we enter the painful, raw emotion of utter loss, to be present with the Rachels of our world as they wail for lost children? Can we trust God to be with us in our trauma and pain? Can we confess our complicity in bringing on what very well might be the suffering of billions of people? It's been said that we're the first generation to experience the effects of climate change and perhaps the last that can make necessary changes to mitigate its severity. In the introduction to her book, See No Stranger, Valerie Kaur states the issue well. The same supremacist ideologies that justify colonialism, the conquest, rape, massacre, and enslavement of black and brown people around the globe, those same ideologies justify industries that accumulate wealth by pillaging the earth, poisoning the water, and darkening the skies. Global temperatures climb, seas rise, storms intensify, fires rage. Will we marshal the vision, skill, and solidarity to solve these problems together, or will we perish? Is this the darkness of the tomb or the darkness of the womb? I don't know. All I know is the only way we will endure is if each of us shows up for the labor. That's the end of the quote from Valerie. What will be our labor as the body of Christ, working to lessen the wailing of future generations, bound to suffer trauma and loss, as systems that sustain life on this planet begin to collapse? Christ came to free us from our sinful ways and show us how to live more fully in God's ways of love. Jesus was and is a new Moses, bringing us all out of slavery and back to the promised land. It's the season of Christmas. It's a new year. Let us trust that Christ remains present with us, leading us on this dangerous venture, teaching us to embrace our sorrow and lose our lives so that we might fully live. Christ comes to birth God's fire of love in our hearts and souls. We're called this day to put this love into action, to grieve with all the Rachels of our world, wailing with them at the loss of their children. Today, we breathe and we begin to push, birthing a whole new world where tyrants like Herod are no more. Not because they've been defeated, but because they too have been converted to God's ways of revolutionary love. Amen.